Man, feels good to be in this space again, you know.
We're back.
Back together in the same room, in case you can't tell.
Shady's back.
Yeah. And JoJo's Part 5, pretty good. You know, I have a couple little issues here and there, but, you know, we'll get to that. You know, but, man, it's crazy. But, still don't know what King Crimson does, really. Like, I don't...
What do you mean? It's pretty simple.
I mean, like, yeah, he can kind of, like... There's a kind of a clairvoyant element, but then also, like, can he reverse time? Does he stop time? Like,
he erases time.
He erases... Okay, so if he erases time, then what happens to, like, you know, then how does he do anything in that time?
All right, you want to know what? Fine. I admit it. I don't know how King Crimson works.
That's very sudden.
He erases time, but what does that mean? You erase time, then it shouldn't be there. What does he mean? What does it mean he erases time? He erases time, but all the stuff still happens? Like, okay, fine. You can stop time. You can turn back time. You can't erase time. If you erase the time, how does he know? How does King Crimson work? How does King Crimson work? Please! I'm Brogan.
I'm Josh, and this is How to Otaku. The show where we don't erase the time, we dwell on the time that we spent with these shows.
I will explain to you, dear viewer, how King Crimson works in time.
King Crimson is not the most befuddling stand in this, by far, to me. Like,
what is Gold Experience?
Golden Experience.
GER,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, GER kind of... We'll get there. So, this is our episode on Golden Wind Part 2.
Yeah.
And by Golden Wind Part 2, I mean just the second half of it.
Mm-hmm.
Episodes
It's Part
21,
2 of Part 5.
Yeah, Part 2 of Part 5. Episodes like 21
Come on, keep up, you know.
The end of it. So, when we left off...
Yeah.
Fugo left the party.
Fugo left the party. They had, they've just made enemies of the boss, you know.
Officially.
Yeah. Like...
They're on the shit list now.
They are. And now they're on the run, and they're trying to be like, okay, so how do we take down the boss? Because there's, like, obviously, you know, we don't even know who he is. Yeah, we don't even know who he is, and there's no way we can escape his grasp.
Right, because we're in the gang, and the gang is everywhere.
Yeah, so... Yeah, and then, like, I don't know, just like a series of events happens from there. I don't know.
It kind of is just like a... And then.
Yeah, and
you know,
then.
It the story pacing is not necessarily as interesting as the things that happen, if that makes sense. Because there are still, like, big, important character moments that we get.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of... It's still kind of separated from, like, villain of the week, even though it's still very much that's going on, because it always is, but, like, it doesn't feel as rote as, like, Part 3, for example.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I don't know, I was kind of thinking about it towards the end, and, like, I was trying to, like, you know, I think that Part 3 and Part 5 are definitely very, like, you know, they're very complementary to each other.
Yeah.
You know, especially like structurally. You know, like the kind of like the adventurous kind of like, you know, we're going after this one guy, and then he's sending off a whole bunch of little guys after us along the way.
But instead of like a tour of the world, it's just a very macrocosmic tour of Italy.
Yeah, it's a tour of Italy. The Olive Garden plate, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's I know we talked about it in the last episode, but it's fucking gorgeous. The Colosseum, like every single shot, and it ramps up, I think, in the second half.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I was looking at the credits every time they roll, and it mentions Kakani every time, which I know is like an in-betweening software, and I think this is the first time that they used that, so that might have given them the ability to focus more on those kind of details on stuff.
I'm not familiar with the process in that kind of depth, but I mean, whatever they did, like Morio is gorgeous. Part 3 looks pretty good. It's not the most visually overwhelming thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, there are pops when it's like going all JoJo's, but like, and then you step into Morio and it's like the fucking sky is yellow all the time. So, and then we step into like these pastel, purple, blue, just like ethereal color palettes that we get pasted over just some of the most gorgeous architecture from our real world. And it's just like, it's all punched up exactly how Hirohiko Araki...
like, I wonder if before he wrote this, he ever actually, like, went to Italy, you know? Like, I'm not sure how much of a traveler he is.
I think he did. He does a lot. If he didn't actually go there, I would be surprised. I
imagine he does now that the series is very successful.
Well, and this was about 20 years into the run when he was writing it. So he probably would have been able to. You're asking me this, I'm like, oh shit, I should have done more research. But I feel certain.
I'm asking because I didn't do research, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm just kind of like posing questions.
And something about Araki is, even as part of Part 5, he had collaborations with Gucci, like, art from Part 5 was in the Louvre. Like, this is kind of, I don't know if this is the first time, but this is, like, at least in my mind, one of the major points where he had, like, direct collaborations with like real world art institutions and real world fashion institutions where, like, I mean, obviously, like, the outfits and the character designs in JoJo's have always been very kind of like fashion forward, kind of like out there.
Like, I mean, like, Part 4, I would say, is kind of the turning point of that. Like, I mean, not to say anything bad about the like the costume design in the previous parts. It's all pretty good, but it's a lot of, like, you know, chiseled top. I mean, you know, chiseled dudes with no tops on, you know, for a while. You know, very what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just like the kind of like
just shoebox shonen.
The Greek kind of stature, you know, like just
exactly. An Adonis, you know.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But then, like, you know, Part 3 a little bit, and then especially in Part 4, you're getting a lot more of the fashion sensibilities. You know,
and from Part 5 onward, really is like when, like, between Giorno and Jolene, and it just like it gets progressively more kind of like in that era, to the point where, like, Part 8 you have Josuke again, we'll get there, and he's just in a full, like, sailor outfit. All that to say, I think Araki, if he didn't go to Italy, I would be surprised, but at the very least he did extensive research, and it shows. I mean, like, it's not just a product of David Productions that these renderings are in this. Like, if you look at the panels from Part 5, there are several where it's just like a couple of characters, but then in the background it's some monumental piece of Italian architecture, you know?
Yeah. But I was comparing this to Part 3, and I was thinking about it kind of as the show was kind of reaching its conclusion, and I was like, you know, I think that Part 3 generally on the whole is a little bit more rote and mundane, right? Like, it's, well, not mundane, but like it's, you know, beyond the kind of Arakiism of just, like, you know, the stands and the whole, like, you know, the mind games and everything and stuff like that. It is
very just monster of the week.
Yeah, it has a very, like, traditional shonen structure, right? And then Part 5 is very similar, but it feels a little bit more dolled up by these kind of mafia elements, you know?
Yeah, and you get a lot more, like, mystery and intrigue going on. Like, you get the stuff kind of behind the scenes where you see, like, the gang members, like, one of them had been, like, frozen into a block. Like, the whole impetus for one of them joining is, like, their friend got frozen into a block and then sawn into pieces and then, like, mailed to the, like, so you get a lot of the kind of Arakiisms mixed in with, like, Godfather ass fucking Italian mafia like shenanigans, but then it's also just stand fights, and it's really interesting stand fights because everybody's like Araki is finally getting really comfortable with the power system, and so he can just do whatever the fuck he wants. Mold spores that take over the entire city up to a certain elevation. Like that's the one that really in my mind
turns the ground into a swimming pool, you know. Yeah,
fucking you're dead, and then the stand is autonomous, and it will chase you forever.
Yep.
What do you do? Like, and I do kind of want to take a moment while we're talking about stands to punch in. A few episodes back, you asked me if stands ever talk to someone.
Yes. And
so this is what I was talking about with Spice Girl.
Spice Girl.
Exactly. So yes, sometimes. Yeah. Kind of.
They give her a little bit more of like a, you know, I guess like a traditional like spiritual awakening kind of moment, you know, where it's like she gets to talk to her stand, and her stand kind of like tells her about, you know, like harnessing her power and you know all that shit, you know. And I don't know, I feel like that's kind of a thing that like is a little bit missing from all the other stands. I know you can't do it for literally every other stand user, but like, you know, give me a little bit of the stand-to-person interaction, you know? I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic. That
Absolutely. And I think one thing, like, we've gotten that origin story, right? Yeah. We've gotten it with Jonathan, where it's, like, literally since the time he was a baby, we see everything that happens.
Yeah.
But, like, how did Josuke get Crazy Diamond, and how did he figure out how it works? Because like when we meet him, he's pretty well comfortable with the concept of it, and he's doing goofy shit with it already, like punching holes through his mom and then fixing her without her even knowing.
I'm trying to remember, is part 5 the first part that has talking stands? It might.
Echoes
does talk. Yes, you're right. You're correct.
But this is the first time that we've got a stand that like has a conversation with somebody, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's like a difference.
Yeah, progresses the other characters' development.
Right. Like exactly. And it's interesting, but it's not really like.
It's not dwelt too hard.
No, it's not really something that they ever like come back to. There's no real reason to. It's just like okay, it's. But it does raise the question of, like, does this happen every time? Or is it just, like, sometimes under certain circumstances? Like, if you awaken to a stand like Jotaro did when his whole bloodline just woke up with stands.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't talk to that guy because, first of all, I don't know if Star Platinum knows how to speak.
Jotaro is also not much of a talker.
He's not much of a talker.
He's just
he doesn't ask many questions.
Yeah, he just vibes you
out. But
out.
he's just like... I have a demon that brings me presents. So it's like he obviously never had a conversation.
Yeah.
So it brings up those kinds of questions, and there's not really a specific answer. I feel like it's kind of very case by case, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it is cool to see. It's interesting to know that there are circumstances where this can happen, and it's cool to see an example of that. But I think the stand fights are cool. I think the most interesting thing going on here is Doppio.
Yes, Doppio and Diavolo. Yes, like that's definitely the point where I kind of perk back up. You know, it's like, oh, what's the deal with this guy, and like the kind of like the dual personality that's definitely going on. You know.
So
like,
how fast did you kind of pick up on that? Like how when did you realize that? So actually, let me roll it back. In the last episode, you were saying, "Oh yeah, they're setting this up, and I don't know if I like it, and it's so blatantly obvious, and it's like so." And I didn't ask you because I kind of wanted to have this conversation.
I thought
in
it was
episode.
Dio.
You thought it was Dio.
I thought it was going to be Dio for sure.
Sure,
like you know, Araki, you know, really genius writer when it comes to you know like the interactions between characters and you know like the and the way stand fights play out and. You know, getting them to do all these crazy tricks that nobody else would ever think of. He's not a genius writer when it comes to like plot and structure. Let's be honest. Like he is playing within a
he's playing to his power. He's definitely writing what he knows.
Yeah, and like I say that, but now it's like, well, he set up this whole thing with Giorno where it's like, oh, he's Dio's son. I was like, okay, that's gonna pay off at some point. You know, it's gonna become really, really important that he's Dio's son. So obviously, it makes sense that Dio would be the boss. You know,
Right?
And we just have to fight Dio again.
Sure.
You know.
Nope.
Definitely not.
Nope.
Dio is nowhere to be found.
Dio is nowhere. Dio's dead. Dude.
Dio actually died.
Jotaro killed him. Dio's dead.
To give Araki credit, at least he did not fucking Emperor Palpatine Dio and be like, he's actually alive.
A second time.
Yeah, a second time.
So, yeah, and so we're introduced to not only someone who is, and I think he knows what he's doing, obviously. He's baiting people. It's going to be Dio. And it's, even once you hear the name Diavolo...
Yeah, Diavolo, yeah.
You're still kind of like... Because you haven't seen him yet.
Yeah.
And you're like, could it be? Could it just be him pretending to be Italian?
Yep. And to my knowledge, no.
No. This is not Dio. This is certainly not Dio. This is Diavolo.
Yeah.
And... wow, what a fucked up, weird little dude. So, we get this origin story for Diavolo, which is really interesting because, as far as I'm aware, this is kind of like an actual, like, folk tale that Araki kind of just plucked from the ether and was like, boop. Of the lady, is she in a, I can't remember exactly if it's a mental institution or a prison or... where his mom is, or if it's like a church or something.
It's a prison, yes.
Right.
Because they mention her sentence.
Right. So, she gives birth to this kid in a prison, and
under the circumstances in which she's been in there, there's no way that she could have
There's no way
pregnant.
she could have gotten pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like immaculate conception.
And very rapid conception, too, because nobody noticed that she was pregnant.
Right.
Until she was literally
until
in
she was
labor.
giving birth.
Yeah.
And then the kid was just fucking weird from the offset.
Yeah. Little pink hair, you know, not crying at all. You know, it's definitely like a kind of an inverse messianic kind of thing, you know.
Right.
But then when the kid finally grows up and he's, you know, got a foster family and everything, and he's like dating this girl and he seems really nice, the dad breaks open the fucking floor and sees his mom tied up, her mouth sewn shut, no idea how long she's been in there.
Yep.
And then Diablo's like just shows back up and he's like, all right, well, now I gotta fucking kill you and burn the whole village down. You know.
Right. And so they set this premise of this person who is not just split in personality.
Yeah.
But like that split in personality triggers a physical alteration in this person. Like he is a physically different man. He gets taller, he gets more muscular, he becomes a beast for all intents and purposes. Yeah, and it's very much like it's almost insinuated that he is the devil himself.
Yeah. Between this and The Stand That Makes You Old, I think that M. Night Shyamalan's just
a JoJo's fan.
Yeah, he's just a JoJo's fan.
He's like, Well, I mean, he's that's all like, isn't it confirmed that that's like one universe, like Split and Glass and Old and
Split, Glass, and Unbreakable are definitely a universe. I don't think any of the others are.
Okay.
Glass was such a bad movie. Oh my god. That's a podcast for another time.
That when you pay us money to do a Patreon episode on M. Night Shyamalan, we'll do one.
Speaking of the Patreon, Rohan Kishibe, February 1st, get on here. All right.
This episode's coming out after that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so it'll be out by the time this episode comes out.
Exactly.
So,
it's already out.
It's literally out.
Go watch it.
Right now.
$1.
Go watch it. $1.
7-day free trial.
Yeah, 7-day free like it literally costs you $12 a year, right? Like I spent more than $12 on lunch today. So
yeah.
Just think about it. Just think about it.
Could be you could consider it an investment.
Yeah.
But I think all the characterizations of this fucked up little weirdo are so interesting. Like, wait a minute. What is that? Hold on, I have to take this. Mush mush. Like, fucking weird little dude.
Yeah. Like, it's so interesting to give this character that has that kind of very internal duality, and then give him, like, the most insane, like, socially uncomfortable, like, little tick.
Just, like, it almost gives me the same feeling that I get from, like, anytime Anton Chigurh is on screen.
Yeah.
Especially rewatching it, because it's, like, now I know that Doppio is the boss, and at any fucking moment, he could just freak out, and whoever is on screen with him will be dead and no one will know.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just a very kind of, like, with the cab driver especially, it's like, what the fuck is gonna happen?
Like, one thing I did clock in is that, like, this part is very interested in toxic relationships, I feel like. Like, you know, there's obviously Diavolo and Doppio, right? You know, that's definitely, but like a lot of the other stands, a lot of the pairings, you know, there's definitely a dominant one and then a submissive one, you know.
Right, I mean,
like,
you get it a lot.
You know,
you get it a lot with kind of the duos that we see them fight.
Yeah.
But even within Passione, like how Narancia and oh god, was it Abacchio who was teaching him how to read, or was it Fugo? It was Fugo.
It was Fugo, yeah.
Right. So there are a lot of elements of kind of like,
and even a fan.
Where should you draw your lines?
And even the mafia is arguably a toxic relationship.
Yeah. I mean, not even arguably. It's like, let's rhetorically analyze being in a gang for a minute.
Yeah.
But like, you don't, like, it's not really your choice whether you're in a gang or not.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like, if you're born in the right place at the right time, and by right, I'm kind of being a little ironic, place. Right?
Yeah.
But, you just get you're just in the circumstances that require you for survival to put yourself at the mercy of a gang structure. Yeah. And so
and like they, you know, the obviously these members of the family are, you know, mostly all right, you know, but like even in that kind of coda we get at the end, you know, we see a little bit of the kind of the friction of the gang again.
Oh yeah, the Rolling Stones episode. I fucking cry, dude. Every single time I read that or watch that episode, I break down because I almost forget that it's coming by the time I get through part 5, and then it's just like, there's another chapter? What's going on? Oh wait. Oh no.
I'm glad you like it. We'll get to it.
Oh my god.
Okay, but
part 5 hater?
Not part 5 hater. But that was what I was getting to with comparing it to part 3, is that like part 3 starts weaker than part 5, but like I kind of feel like in a few ways like part 5 really drops the ball at the end that I think part 3 does not, and I think that endings are really, really important when it comes to storytelling. You know,
the first time I went through part 5, there was, and I still don't really have a great answer for this. Like several years on, I completely understand what you're saying, because like some people have like. People have arguments that there should be stronger characterization for Giorno, and having watched it through, I'm not necessarily sure I disagree, because I think there could be things that are done to make it more clear.
Yeah.
But my read on him is that he's Dio's kid. Yeah. He's a fucking psychopath. Now, it just so happens that his goals are noble, but he is a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, like to that end, like it's Dio but conceived with Jonathan Joestar's body. So like there's the two sides in him. Exactly. You know? Like, or even like I guess it would be like, you know, 3/4 human, 1/4 Dio. So it would be like, you know, just like 75% good nature with a 25% little chaos.
Right. The scene where he beats a man to death for 40 fucking seconds.
Yeah.
In the manga, that's 7 pages.
Wow.
He literally beats Chocolata to death for 7 fucking pages. And so like, and that doesn't account for like, I think a lot of people's major criticism of Part 5, which is Golden Experience Requiem, which in and of itself, really conceptually interesting stand, really dope how powerful it is in like power scaling kind of like cross fight nerd bullshit kind of way. But at the same time, we are presented with a threat that seems so insurmountable that the answer being Giorno stabs himself with the stand arrow again, and it powers up his stand to snap somebody into dying infinite number of times, infinite number of ways.
Yeah.
It's just like, huh. So I get what you mean. I'm not like
it's yeah, like mostly what I mean. I don't really think that Giorno is like undercharacterized because, like you said, there is that bit of like, you know, the hard boiled kind of energy to him. You know, that he's just, you know, that he has noble intentions, but he does not hold back at all.
Right.
You know, but
he's not Josuke. He's not a pacifist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, very hard turn from that. But my bigger problem with Golden Experience Requiem is just that, like, it feels a little bit like a cop-out.
Very Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah,
exactly.
like, you know, he gets this insane power and uses it once, and then the entire conflict is done. The end.
Exactly.
You know?
It is very Deus Ex Machina. And I think, I mean, even in, like, the imagery, like, it's very, like, Italian Catholic kind of, like...
Yeah.
Like, spiritual, like, Catholic
Definitely,
imagery
definitely.
with, like, the...
Yeah.
And so, like... I think it is intended as a Deus Ex Machina, but at the same time, like...
It's deflating, I think.
It is. And
like,
it is deflating on the back of so many excellent character moments.
Yeah.
And so many moments of relationship growth and personal development and just, like, friendship and bonding.
Yeah.
And at this point, we've lost everyone.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was...
Yep, the end. Yeah, it's... And one of my other points about the ending is that, like, I think it, like, it throws a couple too many things on top of itself, right? Like, I like the Silver Chariot thing in concept.
Right, it's a very interesting... It is a very interesting stand interaction because I wouldn't necessarily call it a fight.
Yeah.
Although there are like obviously severe tensions.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily call it a fight. But that in and of itself is kind of a symptom of Jean-Pierre Polnareff being back in the picture.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, but why is Polnareff necessarily back?
Yeah.
And I don't feel like there is necessarily a solid enough justification other than maybe like Araki really wanted to draw Polnareff with no legs in a wheelchair, which, like, you know what, fuck it, you go, you do you, it's dope.
Yeah,
but like,
you know, it's like it's like the, I don't know, to me those little things are like, I think the MCU has kind of ruined that sort of shit for me, where it's like, you know, I kind of go into these sorts of stories expecting those kinds of, you know, those little, like, things for characters to come back. And, you know, it's, like, it's less satisfying for me now that it does. Because, like, it's happened so many times.
I have seen 4 MCU movies. And they are Iron Man, Spider-Man Far From Home, or whatever the first one was.
Homecoming, yes.
Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers Endgame... No, the one before Infinity War.
Infinity War.
And sorry. Yeah, the Spider-Man movie that I said before. No Way Home and Homecoming. So
okay.
Iron Man, Avengers Infinity War, and 2 Spider-Man movies. So like, okay, I'm not primed on that.
You've seen 3 of the best ones and then No Way Home. But but yeah, save yourself. Like it will ruin this type of storytelling trope for you, where like
And
something crazy drops and then you're just like, okay, I've seen this sort of shit before. Okay, now what are you actually gonna do with it? And like the answer is that he turns into a turtle.
He turns into a turtle.
Yeah, and then they fight his stand for, you know, a couple of episodes, and it's like, okay, I like the kind of like, you know, the kind of like the slow moving thing, and you know how he turns all the stands against each other, all that stuff is cool. But then they just figure out that there's a little nugget behind their head that they can just punch and end his life.
Yeah.
And it's just like, again, not to you know, overhead, you know, meta game the whole, you know, how did Araki write this? Because I don't know. I have no clue. But, like, it does strike me a little bit as, like, the kind of weekly, you know, the weekly writing thing.
I feel like, and this, you're hitting on something there, because this is very briefly, if not immediately before Araki went to monthly publication instead of weekly publication. I think. Somebody, if I'm incorrect, somebody correct me in the comments. He may have been doing monthly from the start.
Yeah, but that would make sense.
This feels like a symptom of publication deadlines looming.
Yeah, like, you know, and that might have been the reason why he switched to monthly, is like feeling like he couldn't wrap up Golden Wind the way he wanted to.
Right.
You know, but again, it feels like all these sorts of things just kind of like, you know, there's like all these cool ideas that are getting thrown in, you know, kind of jammed in because he's like, you know, trying to stall a little bit for time, but then at some point he's like, okay, I gotta actually figure out how this is going to resolve. Fuck it, there's just a little nugget in the back.
Right. Fucking Gold Experience Requiem.
Yep. And then
I don't want to sit here and just be like Debbie Downers about Golden Experience Requiem or Silver Chariot Requiem or any of those fights or any of those interactions, because in practice, when you sit there and you watch it and you see Diavolo, you know, do the infinite recursion, like turning into him,
iconic.
It's dope. It's like it's rule of cool, and David Productions does an excellent job of kind of pulling that out of it. Mm-hmm. But yes.
Yeah. And then the coda on top of it all, like, I get some of the impetus for why it's there. You know, it's kind of cool to see some of these characters, especially the ones that have died in the past few episodes, get another interaction. You know, there's Rolling Stone is a cool stand concept, and I get the impetus for, like, having this sort of, like, premonitional element to it. But I don't know why it's tacked to the end. Right? Like,
right. I mean, they could have, realistically, he could have put it in at the very beginning. He could have put it in anywhere. I've never really, not that I never put thought into it. I mean, I feel like at some point I considered, like, maybe I would read this first and then reread the manga.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know. Off the back of what I felt like was a fairly deflating kind of, you know, final encounter.
Yeah.
Like, once I realized what Golden Experience Requiem did, it was like, huh.
Yeah.
So, like, I kind of got a sense there, but then, like, getting that coda, getting the Rolling Stone afterward, was like, okay, this recenters me. I think it kind of reiterates the purpose of what this story was, and I think it.
That's a good point.
I think off the back of what can feel like a deflating ending in Golden Experience Requiem, I think having that cap there to kind of recenter yourself in the purpose of the experience, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put any objective stance out there, but I think that it is maybe not perfect, but I think it is good for what it is trying.
Yeah, I'm not super harsh on it. It's just like all these little things kind of like I guess the problem I have with the coda is just that, like, it's, you know, well, first of all, like, there's a lot of, like, timey-wimey elements to how
King
Golden
Crimson
Wind experience works, and all that stuff works. So, like, you know, you're trying to, like, follow the, like, timeline chronology and figure out exactly what's happening. And then,
what
like,
happened and when it happened and if it happened.
Yeah, and, like, not to say that, like, I didn't get it at a certain point, but then, like, I got it, And then it starts doing all this flashback stuff immediately afterwards, and then I'm like, did I get it? Is something else happening? What is this?
I see. In the anime, it's not split into a separate episode, Rolling Stone, is it? So I had less of a sense of that in my initial experience because I read through this before it was ever animated.
Yeah.
And so when I got there, I was like, is Rolling Stone gonna be here? But when I read it at first, it was the end, and I was like, there's another chapter.
Yeah.
And so that pulled me in, and I was like, okay. And I think even there may have been some sort of like...
Yeah, I definitely think like...
stamp that was like before, or like...
Yeah, if they could have broken it up in a different way, that would have been, preferable. But I understand, it's television, you gotta work with what you have. But like, just like all of that stuff kind of, worked me out. And then like, not to say that like the Rolling Stone stuff is bad, but like it brings you back to the kind of like the monster of the week sort of thing.
Sure.
Like it kind of brings you back into that kind of modality for the very end, and like I don't know, I was kind of I guess I was kind of expecting it to be slightly more, I don't know, like it adds a bit to the emotionality, but like not so significantly that I feel like it needed to be like all of like an episode and a half tacked to the very end of this, like, and it's not super action packed. Like, there's a little bit of action here and there, but it's mostly just, character interaction, like figuring out what this fucking stone does.
And it's very sobering.
Yeah.
To kind of see that like they all kind of knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Or if they didn't, they weren't paying attention. Like they were told what was going to happen. Like
yeah,
they were prophesized to exactly what was going to happen. And it's very sombering to like get through that.
Yeah.
And to like having seen, especially right off the back at the very end, having Narancha getting.
Yeah.
And it's like we lost a Bakio.
We did get a lot of donuts this
Fugo
round.
left. Abakio gets turned into a fucking donut. Bruno's been a zombie for like half the season already, and we didn't even know.
Narancha gets skewered.
And it's just like hit after hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
And then to see to realize while this is happening, oh God.
Yeah.
They knew it was coming.
Yeah.
They didn't know when, they didn't know how, but they knew it was. It's just kind of like, it's sobering, and it kind of recenters that kind of like that sense of purpose, that kind of like, we know why we're here, we know what we're doing, like we have a noble cause and we believe in it, so we're going to do this.
Yeah. You're pulling me a little bit back around to it, I'm thinking about it a little bit more. I don't know, I guess I found like the conclusion a little bit deflating, and I wanted something to really pick me up out of that, and that was like, no, I'm going to like re-ground you back into the kind of like the darkness of the death here,
Right. Well, and I'm not trying to diminish that at all, because like that is a valid experience. Mm-hmm. That is very similar to the experience I had on reading that initial encounter. The like once it was all said and done, because like I still think we need to talk about like just mechanically Doppio and Diavolo and King Crimson, because we kind of glazed over that and jumped right to Gold Experience.
I'm not maybe I just don't care about all the mechanics too much, but like I'm not too confused about it,
Well, no, it's not necessarily that it's confusing, but like the fight sequence itself is so fucking menacing, and it's just the entire time everybody is like piece by piece starts falling apart, and you're like, holy shit, how are they gonna... And I know that's kind of like what Araki does best, is putting you in unwinnable situations and then figuring it out anyways. But it's so dialed up to 11 that while we do have such a Deus Ex answer to everything, it's like, I really don't know what the fuck else could have happened. Giorno dies, they lose, you know?
Yeah, like
and so and again, not to excuse any of it, because it is fairly deflating, especially upon first experience. If you go back to it, like I have, you may come around on it, you may not.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm kind of like Stockholm syndrome on this shit at this point. Like I'm JoJo's ride or die, man. Araki can do no wrong. But like I'm not gonna say that every single person has to have that experience of it, because that's just not the case, you know?
Yeah, like coming out of it, I wasn't sure if I liked it more or less than Part 3. I think I'm on the side that I like it more than Part 3 now, and probably even better than Part 1, but like it's still a little bit low mid on my tier ranking.
Sure.
We're gonna have our tier rankings in a few episodes. Of,
yeah?
All the part rankings, you know.
Well, I mean,
right?
I guess at this point we have to, because by the time we finish Part 6, Part 7 might be like actually officially announced, or we might have a trailer or something by then.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wouldn't necessarily hold my breath, because like we are just hearing news that it, and I say just exists. As in like a month or so now, but like that it is actually officially in production.
Yeah.
So we're probably still a ways out from that. But yeah, I mean, of what's animated, by the time we hit the end of Part 6, we're gonna have to do that. Yeah. But I don't know. I have a lot of strong feelings about Part 5. I like Part 5 a lot more than I like Part 3.
Yeah.
Generally, I think the things that it's strong at far outweigh the things that it kind of fumbles in some instances. I think the intrigue and kind of just the framing within.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it's like, I mean, he's always pulling some different kind of genre work from. And so, like, initially you get your Victorian monsters and ghouls and shit. Yeah. And then you get, weird American god, ancient spiritualism stuff. And then you get, like, Around the World in 80 Days, but we're fighting people. And then
you get small town murder mystery.
You get small town murder mystery. You get
Twin Peaks, but happy.
Right. You get The Gang, and then next we're going to fucking Prison Break, baby.
Yeah.
So like
he's always switching it up, you know? Like,
and it's always cool to see what the new thing is gonna be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the comparisons to Part 5. I think that Part 5 is probably better than Part 3 on a couple of reasons. Like, first of all, like the mystery at it all. Like the mystery in Part 3 is never who is doing this, why are they doing it, like none of that. It's literally just what is his power, how do we figure that out, and what do we do about it. And
initially, like, until you know, if you go in unspoiled somehow at this point, until you know Dio stops time, it's pretty intimidating, like all the way up until the point where like Polnareff is at the stairs confronting him, and it's just, what's going on? And then you realize it's just Dio running up and down the stairs, picking him up and putting.
But in this one, it's like, who is it?
Who is it?
And
even then, once you figure out who it is, you still don't fucking know who it is.
Yeah, and then even after that, even after they figure out who it is, they finally, like, they have the body swap thing happen, and it's like, oh, now who is it? You know?
Right? Exactly. So it's, like, there are so many, like, there's the intrigue, there's the mystery, there's the, like, really fucked up Godfather-esque, like, references that are in there of, like, gang torture and gang initiation shit.
Yeah.
It's just, like, its own whole thing.
Yeah.
The way that they play within gang structure is interesting as a setting. And just the character work. Just all of the character interactions and the characterization of who is there are so solid. Especially if we're comparing it to Part 3, where it's like the most we got was like a secret handshake that we didn't know they could do until they did it.
Yep. You know, Polnareff's Bizarre Adventure. Love it.
You'll hate who's coming back next season.
Oh, let me think. Are there characters I hate? I don't know.
Anyway, Josh, we're running a little short on this one, but do you have any more thoughts on?
Honestly, no. You know, like, let me think about just some of the past. You know, kind of like the mid stands or not the mid stands, like the
because like we got Clash and Talking Head. We talked a little bit about this before we even started.
We got the shark guy. Who's the shark guy?
That's Clash.
That's Clash. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
another kind of like toxic, like very homoerotic relationship,
right.
And
then later on that same line we get Chocolata and Oasis, or I can't remember the guy's name, but it's Green Day and Oasis.
Yeah.
And we get they're oh my god, the Metallica fight.
Oh yeah, the Metallica fight.
Like there's. The stand fights are cool. I know we kind of are glazing over the stand fights because...
Whatever happened to the rest of Metallica's little gang? Are they alright? Are they just chilling?
I guess so.
Good for them.
Good for them. They either got assimilated into Passione as Giorno took over and became a gang star and the mob boss.
Their middle manager died, but... nothing bad happened to them, so they're all right.
We never got any flashback sequences of them getting frozen and then cut up into little thin strips.
Oh yeah, those guys are fucked.
Yeah. But like that's what I'm talking about with like The Godfather is like the fucking you wake up and there's your prized precious horse and its head is severed and it's at the foot of your bed, like. My loved one is being mailed to me piece by piece.
Jeez.
But all in all, I think Part 5 is a really good watch.
Yeah.
It's really good even on rewatch.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's not a terrible amount of depth. I mean, especially in comparison to something like a Lane,
Yeah, but like JoJo's not deep, let's be frank, JoJo is not deep,
Well, it's like, and especially if we don't want to go stand by stand and just like describe to you the fights as they happened, or like say like, could Notorious Big beat fucking Oasis? Like, we could do that.
We could do like a 30-day long bracket where we're just talking for 30 days straight about like, okay, what stand would be what stand.
And I'm down to do that. I'm not going to drag Josh through that for one, if he doesn't want to. And I feel like for the most part, that's not really what the audience comes here for.
Yeah.
If you want a Patreon series of me fucking tier listing JoJo's stands and explaining to you how Araki has never made a single writing mistake.
That'd be a great thing to do on stream.
Yeah.
It's just like do this stand tier rankings and everybody be like, L take.
I'm like, fuck you, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm the real scholar here. But yeah, I mean, I personally, Part 5 is probably in my, like, of the 8 parts that I've read so far, I'm taking hiatus on Part 9 because I want more of it out before I plug along with it. Yeah. But it's in the top 50% at the very least, if not top 3. It's hard for me between, like, 7-2 and then... I think it's 7-5. I don't even know because I need to go back through 8 before I actually release my opinions like this. But I think it's 7-2 and 4 are like my top 3, and then 5 and 8 are floating somewhere around here.
Okay, yeah, that's about where I'm at. Where like there's like the high echelon, and then there's the middle echelon, and then just kind of floating towards the bottom, not doing too bad with like Stardust Crusaders, and this is in the middle section,
right? It's like I want to make it very clear that I am a no skips.
No skips.
Part skipping is a thing that people in the community are like they I think for the longest time, I don't know if it's still a thing, but there are wars about this, about whether it's okay to part skip or not.
Yeah, which is bullshit.
And I'm not going to kill you if you skip a part, but I am going to tell you that you aren't getting the full experience if you don't watch part 1 and part 2. Because even though, like, I can sit here and I can say part 1 and part 2 are not as good as part 7.
Yeah.
Part 1 and part 2 of JoJo's are like 3 million times better than Demon Slayer. Just for example, you know, or...
going after the Demon Slayer fans. Live.
The animation is great. That's the only thing. We can talk.
I saw the one about the train. The
movie?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
Yeah,
animation's pretty good.
It was a movie. You know, I don't know what the fuck happened in the last 45 minutes, but you know.
Bunch of bullshit. I don't think the writing room knew what was happening either.
Some character they introduced, like, you know, at the very start of that movie was doing some shit, and I was like, okay, what's the rest of the gang doing? Nothing, I guess.
So yeah, part 1 and part 2 in particular. I mean, part 2 is still in my top 3, but I think that you need part 1 to fully experience JoJo's, because so much of it is like Jonathan and his influence on the family.
Yeah.
And then each generational influence on, like, because we'll see this a lot with Jolene in part 6. And we see it some here with Giorno, with like literally he may not be directly influenced by the teachings of Dio or Jonathan, but we see a lot of both of them in his personality. So like you get a lot of that, and I feel like you just need that baseline. It's such a little investment for the amount of...
Yeah, it's like 6 episodes long.
It's such little investment for what it provides to the rest of the story that, like, I think ranking it low on a tier list like that is improper almost. Like, I don't disagree with it because I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But, like, it doesn't sit right with me in a way because I think it has more importance than that.
The thing about a JoJo tier ranking is that, like, you can't have anything below a C, right? Like, unless you're getting pretty controversial, I don't think that anything gets less than a C.
Right.
You know? Like, I will say, like, part 1, the thing about it is that, like, it's a... You know, it's got some of the Iraqi-isms in it, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty, like, you know, standard kind of setup for a shonen,
sure.
right? But like it also lays the framework upon which everything else builds off of.
Exactly.
You know,
it is the cornerstone.
Yeah.
And there's
sometimes the cornerstone's not all that interesting, but like you're not.
It's not the prettiest, but like it's history, man.
Yeah.
And if you take the cornerstone out, you're gonna have a lot of questions about how the rest of the building is standing.
Yeah. Standing? Anyways. Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
Link in the description. We're doing Rohan Kishibe. 4-part miniseries on Netflix. Easy watch. You know.
If you like JoJo's, if you like part 4.
If you like Rohan, if you like...
You like mysteries, really.
Yeah,
even
if you like short-form horror, really.
Right. So, honestly... It's not a bad introduction itself to the JoJo series, I think.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, honestly, I might try this trick on my friends who are like, I don't like JoJo's. Because I've never thought about this. But like, it is just disconnected enough. Like, you don't have to know anything about anything. Stands exist. They do things. Rohan Kishibe is a manga artist. There you go. You can watch this show now.
Yeah, you kind of have to understand how Heaven's Door works, but we'll get into that. But that should be out on February 1st, which is like 2 days before this episode drops. So it'll be out when you hear this.
If you're listening to this right now, for $1,
$1,
and that's $1 a week from today, because you get a 7-day free trial when you sign up.
Exactly.
So for $1, you can get all of our Patreon content.
All of our Patreon content. You get all of this content for ad-free forever.
Ad-free forever.
You know, and then I don't know. We're still workshopping some other little things to throw in there too. But
Check it out. There are, I think there's already a couple things on there that are, if nothing else, pretty interesting and
yeah,
a decent value, if you ask me, for what we're actually.
we're not
offering.
asking you to break the bank for us, you know.
No,
but
certainly not. But like we've got a couple little fun treats in there that I
Yeah.
think, and it's going to develop. Well, we're as this grows, if we have the opportunity, we want to offer more for what you give. So like.
Yeah.
Different things like Discord roles, access to possible recording streams, different things like that as time goes along. We'll try to get more content there. As of right now, we kind of have a timeline of once every other month. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
no, I think we might change it to once a month because I feel like the cadence of this is that like it's going to be things that aren't necessarily anime related and aren't necessarily like long form television. So like it'll be easier to kind of get these out.
It could be a movie, a miniseries, a game. Fuck, we could talk about.
We could literally talk about anything. We
could talk about anything. We can sit down for
literally
45
called
minutes
filler episodes for a
and
reason.
talk about Ultimate Chicken Horse.
Yeah,
you know, we might do polls on the Patreon.
If you just think we're incredibly smart people who and want to hear our opinions on everything. That's where you get it. So
opinions on the political situation in the Middle East.
No, we're not doing that.
Opinions on food culture.
We hope everybody is safe. That's all I'm going to say.
Live long and prosper. Wait, I'm not a Star Trek guy. Unless you want me to watch Star Trek, and then I'll do it for $1.
Yeah. But yeah, and then if you want to check out our social medias, we're on. I guess it's just Bluesky and TikTok at this point, you know?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, like, TikTok, not going to say anything about the guy, but very happy that it's back, for the moment being anyways.
For now, TikTok is back.
Bluesky also apparently dropped, like, a video form, some kind of thing, some kind of video scroll. I'm not sure how well it's doing.
I am broadly disconnected from social media,
that's nice. That's good for you. I feel like a lot of my friends have been doing that in 2025, and maybe you should too. Except when you want to see our content.
I am on Bluesky. I still have accounts other places. They are not active, but
yeah,
I'm my most active on Bluesky, I guess. So
yeah.
Sometimes I post funny jokes or bully bigots, but
Yeah, and if you have anything you want to share with us, leave a comment or send us an email at feedback@howtootaku.com. Howtootaku.com if you want to see
one-stop shop.
If you want to see any of the shows we previously covered, if you want to see our schedule, any of that stuff. That's in the description.
Right. And that's got links to all of our social media accounts. It's got links to the YouTube, the Spotify page. And, on the topic of us cutting down our social media presence, we're on Grassroots, baby. Tell your friends about us.
Share
if you
us around,
enjoy
dude.
this show, just click the thumbs up, subscribe. We don't do this ever, but there's a little three dots with the little line connecting them, and you just click that somewhere down there. If you just click that button and then click share, and then you can post this in your Discord channel where you're hanging out with all your buddies.
Send it to your buddies on Snapchat. Just share us around. We're trying to be a pretty inclusive, accessible podcast.
And by all means, I'm starting to run out of ideas. So please, for the love of God, tell me what you want us to watch.
We have a very long backlog, but
we have quite the backlog. But I want to keep it going.
But on that backlog, and what we're going to get to next episode is
Ranma 1/2.
Ranma 1/2, the new Mappa adaptation.
The Mappa adaptation.
Though it would be interesting to compare it to the original. If we ever wanted to just watch part of that and be like, okay, how does this compare? But I imagine Ranma will be going for a while because that manga went on for a while.
Probably, yeah.
But
this is going to be their new long-term thing, I think.
Yeah, and that episode should be coming out, let me do math, February 17th.
Third, then yes.
February 17th.
So just after Valentine's Day.
Yeah, exactly, kind of a romantic show from what I've seen so far. you know, like there's
I
romantic
haven't actually
tension
started
and stuff.
watching it yet, so
You know,
I'll take your word for it.
You know, my understanding is that it's like, you know, a new love triangle every couple of episodes, you know.
I gotcha.
But yeah, that's all we got for you. Until next time.
He's been Josh.
Yep.
I've been Brogan.
See y'all, spicy ladies.
See you, Space Cowboy. That's crazy.